Please, there's been a complaint.
It's you that's doing the complaint.
I'll speak to her later with a large stick.
Just to recap, Operation Market Garden, Market, the ground, the Air Forces, 3 divisions of paratroopers, taking 5 bridges at Yyilbjbjyvutckytcykc, at Nijmegen and at Arnhem. They were Market. Garden, they were the ground troops, and they were led by this chap here, Brown Horrocks. He was quite an enigmatic chap, actually. Not much to say, there's a lot to say about it, but I'm getting pushed by the colonel here. But he led the Armour Division, so we'll probably say a little bit more about it later on. Okay, sir?
These are the most important personalities, Adair and Thomas. 50 Division, I'm not going to talk about next time, commanded by Graham. But Adair and Thomas were certainly there and had a great deal to play in the movement of 30 Corps up the corridor. Now, one of the things I said to you last time was it's quite difficult to understand how big a corps is. These aren't the fighting troops, these are the corps troops. Everybody remember how many vehicles there were in 30 Corps? 20,000. You're going to move 20,000 vehicles 60 miles. It's just the vehicles. What about the men? Paying the support. And they had petrol, by the way, to go another 250 miles beyond line, because they were actually going to take the bridge. This is just a look at the number of units here who are artillery. Think of when I said to you the fact that I had to be resupplied by a train to my battery, the trucks of ammunition going up the line. By the way, most important thing of all, which I've forgotten, but will certainly come later, up a one-track road. Never, ever move a military formation up a one-track road. You need at least 2. One, I might add, for the infantry and the armour, but 1 for the artillery. Because as soon as the infantry and the armour get into action, they need the artillery support. So the artillery move up in parallel, prepared to move off and deploy, and come into action within 5 minutes of the order being given. It can be done. But there was another problem, and I'll talk about that later. 30 Corps had tanks. It's the standard Sherman, 75mm, and Firefly Sherman with an excellent 17-pounder gun, which could knock out any German tank. There was one slight problem. This thing just caught fire every time it was hit by anything. It was not very well armoured, but it was very manoeuvrable. The artillery, jet artillery, and 25-pounders. That's the 5.5, a gun which was critically important to the defenders in army. Battle. Our Air Force is just a sort of smattering of the sort of aircraft. The heavy bomber, the medium bombers, there, the Typhoon, the rocket-firing Typhoon, artillery, if you like, from the Royal Air Force. Fighters, like the Mustang, of course the Spitfire, and perhaps from our point of view, this obsolescent bomber, the Sterling, towed the Horsa glider. I think it was 3,500 aircraft that took place in Market Garden in total. Transport aircraft, now we're coming on to the things that matter to us. The Dakotas were used to supply or to deliver paratroops. I don't think many Sterlings were, but before we got Dakotas, we used the Sterling as a parachute delivery system as well. But gliders, the small US Waco, which could take a jeep or 13 men. The Horsa, which we've already mentioned, this is actually one broken on the ground, literally broken. It breaks in half there to let the men out. And you can see here a jeep and its trailer and its men. Actually happens to be Lieutenant Colonel Sheriff Thompson in command of the Light Regiment at Army. And this beast here, which nobody knows very much about, until I found this.
The Hamilcar was a larger version of the British glider.
Wrong.
The wingspan of 110 feet, it was constructed of wood and metal. It could carry very heavy loads, such as the Tetrarch-like tank, 2 brand carriers, or artillery.
What's that?
Ryanair?
This was actually tacked on, and I left it in the clip because there weren't very many of the really big gliders, and they brought in one particular piece of kit into demand, and that was the 17-pound anti-tanker. The majority, in fact, were horses used by the British, and the Wackos used by the Americans. This, by the way, showed at landing these huge flaps. What is interesting about that glider, and indeed the Hamilcar, is they were very good aerodynamic beasts. Launched, released at 15,000 feet, which was feasible. Right, they could glide very well for over 7 miles, a number which will come back to you later. First Allied Airborne Army. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I'm going to put everything up and...
That's not any pumpkin, is it? The top? Oh, you take her off.
Right, okay, we've got here. Brereton, he was Air Force. He was muted to get the job, but again, politics would have it that he became deputy commander, he became top commander. This guy, Andrew Ridgway, I think he'd have been a great boss of the First Allied Airborne, because he'd seen combat. Gosh, I'm going to write it down right here. Yeah. He's seen combat in Sicily as well, and Italy. And the interesting thing about Andrew Ridgway was he was asked to he was the boss of 82nd in Italy, and he was given the mission to drop his troops just outside Rome. Then we found out there was 2 big German divisions, and he said, on your bike, I'm not going to drop. And the decision was stopped. Now, I think if you had somebody like Ridgway saying to Montgomery, on your bike, matey, this is too dangerous. You know, but the thing was, this guy here, he was the mate, you see, he was the mate of Montgomery, and I think the two of them were in cahoots, and he just went along with what Montgomery was doing. I think in his heart, he knew it was dead iffy, but he still went along with it. You know? This guy here, Urquhart. Now, Urquhart took over from a guy called Eric Down, and he was commander of 1st Airborne. Urquhart, he was an infantry general. He never jumped. He got airsick. And for some reason, they gave him the job. Nice guy, gave him the job. At first, it's a bit iffy, you know, the guys accept him. But they did accept him in the end. This guy here, Gale, Windy Gale, he was the guy at Pegasus Bridge. He was commander of 6th Airborne. And he was talking to him, telling him about the operation. This guy says, I will do it. He said he'd be sorry before he do it, which is interesting. When he was, after Market Garden, he got sent to the Far East to work with Mountbatten. This guy took over. Right, we've got Jim Gavin and Taylor. Yeah. Both have seen combat before. The interesting thing I found was that the Americans, the 82nd and the 101st, they've both seen combat several times. 1st Airborne hadn't. The only person that had done any combat in Airborne during the war was Brigadier Lethbury, and he was at Sicily. So one of the things to say about Market Garden was they didn't have the right commanders in the job. Wrong person, wrong job. You know? So that's what I'll say about that.
Right. The reason why there are dotted lines is that these people had influence. The solid line means they actually did things. The influence here by Haigwell Smith, he commanded 52nd Division. Haigwell Smith said when he saw the plan, tell you what, we'll send some gliders in for you. They're not glider trained, these people are going to come in by Dakota. Interesting to see what happens later. Quick one. These are the Air Force commanders. the snakes in the grass. Right? Hollingsworth, not as bad as Williams. Hollingsworth said, I think we should do 2 drops in a day. Williams and Brereton, both Air Force, said no, you can only do 1. But both of Hollingsworth and Williams said, not on the bridge. Too dangerous. Great. Dangerous? These are desk-bound soldiers.
I just question why the Air Force had anything to do with where they dropped them. I know they had the transports, but surely it shouldn't be first airport commanding officer.
Right.
I don't understand.
This is a plot to get me back on the line.
Yeah.
In Normandy, everybody knows about the D-Day invasion. Virtually nobody knows about Operation Neptune, which was getting the soldiers there, commanded by the Navy. The Navy transported the soldiers to the beaches. It was a naval responsibility for the operation. Exactly the same thing happens here. The Air Force is required to transport first, so it's the Air Force's responsibility, and it's the Air Force's overall command. Once they're on the deck, then it's land command. Okay? But nobody in the Navy is ever going to put a whole stack of soldiers in front of Dover cliffs and say, "Climb the cliffs, chaps." Right? They're going to find somewhere to do that. Not one of these men had ever done anything at all about airborne operations. This man was responsible for Pegasus Bridge, but also responsible for a complete division. These 2 likewise, and him. Were they in any way consulted during this operation? As far as I can see, the answer was no. So Market was an Air Force operation. If you're going to go and bomb the hell out of a city in Germany, using a 1,000-bomb array, the Air Force was exceedingly good at it. Certainly by this stage of the war. But you can't just say we're going to deliver blokes without knowing that they've got to be delivered into the right places. This is not a beach where they can go through and find their own. They're going to land and carry out, literally, as soon as they can get the rig off their back, the parachute off their back, they're going to go into action. They've got to land in the right place. They didn't. I have to say. And Chatterton, by the way, a man who I can't find a picture of, was actually the commander of the glider pilot regiment, who you will hear much more about next time. Now the corps that was actually sent into battle consisted of Browning, Urquhart, Gavin and Taylor. These are 3 combat soldiers. This man hadn't been in combat at all in the Second World War. And he was the father of the Airborne Army, so he must be good, mustn't he? There's more to that than meets the eye. By the way, after this, everybody who I'm going to show you took a part in the operation, so they were all very important. 101st, very experienced Commander Taylor. By the way, when you see him depicted in The Bridge Too Far, it's almost identical. It's uncanny. It looks just like him. I can't remember who actually did it. And there are his commanders. The only reason why I put them up is because you really ought to see the men who actually carried out the action. They commanded regiments, but a regiment, an American regiment, a bit like the size of a British brigade. And indeed, 101st and 82nd were bigger divisions than 1st Airborne Division. And that has a very important consequence. So does the plan.
Didn't someone suggest that the 81st come to Ireland?
Correct. And the reason for that was because the reason for that suggestion was because 1st British Division is small, was small. But that couldn't possibly have happened. Anybody put their finger on why? Why couldn't that happen? It could never have happened.
It wasn't something to do with glory, was it, in the English?
No. Politics.
Oh, yeah.
It's 30 Corps, which is British. Can you imagine if they hadn't got to the Americans? By the way, you've got to be very careful here. Some of the things I'm telling you are fact, Some of it's speculation, but some of it is entirely wrong because it's my